Chitte bodha vimarsha shakti sahita Sharkunya mangavale Lokesha karanani yasya mahima Tannetranatham stuma. Dvareshanavarantraga hridayago Vasturaganesho manaha Shattadya gurava samiratashakam Tvadara shakyatmakam Chitte bodha vimarsha shakti sahita Shargunya mangavale Lokesha karanani yasya mahima Tannetranatham stumaha. I have not given you the translation of the Mangala Shlokas, that we can do it in the meditation time, because it would take too much of our time of these two stages of Sukshma Dhyana and Paradhyana. You come to page 172 in the translation. Verses 18 to 22. The energy filled with this power is the excellent central energy of activity. Through his awareness, the yogi penetrates in an upward movement by the energy of will, piercing the knots. Kantipeda. Now, how this process happens is by a vibration, spandana. Resting on the vibration at the base and then abandoning the two streams, that is prana apana, he should take the support in Sushumna, which is flowing in the central part. Now it is so interesting that Sushumna is not just a subtle space. There is an energy, she is herself that energy flowing. It's always described, she's flowing. So otherwise when we think Madhya Nadi, it's just like a channel which is hollow, where there is a meditation and the Vijnana Bhairava, that you meditate on it like on the stem of a lotus with this very subtle fiber, etc. But no, here she is herself flowing. Take the support in Sushumna, which is flowing in the central part. It's very important. Supporting himself upon her, the yogi should rest there, abstaining from all sense objects. Again, by freeing himself from illusion, Maya, he should move upwards through his awareness. Here again, it's not a matter of any effort. It's a process of awareness. Just observe and be aware of that upward movement. And then gradually giving up the causes. Now, the causes are the divinities presiding over the chakras. So we don't need to go into that. By piercing the knots, Maya, etc., he attains the 5 voids starting from the heart. Now we had a lot of meditation on Shunya, and here there are stages of Konstantis, there are knots, then there are chakras, which are of course moving dynamic centers, and then there are voids, different levels of Shunya. And in the Swachanda Tantra again, there are 7 Shunyas described in the ascending order. So in the commentary on page 173, having given up the 2 streams, again prana apana, flowing through the lateral nadis, that is, having abandoned them and joining with and resting upon the aforesaid energies of will and cognition, he should take recourse in the Sushumna Nadi. It's a very beautiful expression, And then afterwards, if you know that she is also Devi, take recourse in the Sushumna Nadi, which is flowing in the central path, and along with the central prana, which is the supreme energy, Brahma-Shakti. Having taken recourse there, he should cease all his sense perceptions, and he should stay there, interiorizing all his senses. And then abandoning Maya, exactly, which consists in the ignorance of the central prana, and gradually abandoning these deities, which being located in the heart, etc., are presiding, etc. Then he ascends. Well, Kundalini is not mentioned, but Kundala is one term. It's not identical with Kundalini. In the form of Kundala, which contains the entire universe in her womb, up to the end of the transcendent void. The Shunya, we already had it in the Patulanata, Shunya, transcendent void. Resting above that with awareness, he pervades the highest reality in the state of Ummana, the transmental. He should rest means he should join it with the preceding state. Now, we can look at this whole process. Well, in the previous commentary also, pages 170 and 171. So we have already gone through that becoming I, aham bhutva, but then having entered that by giving up all his bondage, which is full of suffering, up to the end of Mahamaya. Mahamaya is the intermediary state of between Maya and Shuddha-Vidya. Being firmly established in that state, becomes one with the Supreme Shiva, who is all-pervasive, and who is united in essence with the Supreme Energy, which is ever arisen. In this way, by the central path which spreads to the end of Dvadashanta, filling the center of his heart with the flow of supreme bliss. And having pierced by merely entering in the heart, he should meditate and reflect on the supreme bliss which is filled with elixir until he attains repose therein. And then he should let flow this nectar of immortality which brings forth from his heart. This is very beautiful, this whole process which is landing in the heart as a place of repose and a place filled with that nectar of the blissful nectar. And this nectar of which brings forth from his heart he should let it flow, means he should make it flow out by manifold streams. So there's a whole process where first that Amrita has to be experienced in the subtle body, in the rising, and then again descending in the heart. But it's not to be retained, as it is said in the beginning, you do this process not only for yourself, but also for others. Then you have to pour it out. Once you have experienced that blissful nectar, then you pour it out to everybody, all the other beings, para, to all the other beings. So that is, the yoga is also a process of not only self-perfection or self-realization or self-liberation, but of compassion. So if you practice yoga also with a sense of compassion at whatever you experience, that bliss, you can let it pour out and share it with others once you have experienced it, that rising and that descending in the heart and filling the heart. So I give you that process of Kula Prakriya. Those who have the book, of course, it is from page 55 onwards, because I have discovered while reading again and again and again this same chapter that there is something contained in it what I call sutras. Very brief phrases which tell you this is the next stage, is the next stage. Like in the sutra, the Shiva Sutra or Yoga Sutra. So here I give you that summary also for those who don't have the book. It starts with, as I said, to be aware of the subtle body, of the constituents of the subtle body, and that is expressed by the sutra Jnatva Sharira. You know what is there in this subtle body. So some knowledge does not mean objectifying knowledge. No, it means awareness, because it's an introvert awareness. It's nothing, you're not objectifying your body like when you go to the doctor. Jnatva Sharira. And then the process which has to take place within the structure of the subtle body is a process of rising, udaya. So it is always this udyama, udaya, udyama, bhairava, and it's the rising. And this word udaya also means sunrise or moonrise. It means there's no effort. You don't have to do it. You can't do it. Rising, you can only allow it to happen again. You cannot force the sun to rise, nor your own inner energy. Sukshma Dhyan Amritena eva uditena. By arising through the nectar of the subtle meditation. So that subtle meditation itself is called the nectar, Amrita. The rising goes along with the filling, nourishing or vitalizing the self of the yogi, as well as of others. Apyaya is a central term of the action connected with Amrita. Amrita is always something fulfilling, something blissful, something apyayam kurute yogi. And then the goal of the entire yoga is to become a divine body, divya deham sabhavati. And I also have noticed the verb is not apnoti, or that it gets something which he is not already there. He's not obtaining something, but it's a transformation. It's a transformation into a divine body. And this divinization is the result of two acts of rising and filling. Ultimately, the very own being, nature, self-awareness or experience of the yogi is nothing but the self-arisen, ever-present supreme energy. So we have already done this. Svodhita to Parashakti, who is non-different from Shiva. Thus, the agent of the yoga of rising is not the yogi, but the energy, who is already arisen, as we have seen before. And what task remains then for the yogi? That also we have seen. Tam Vahit. He should lead her, or allow her to flow. At where? Madhyama Prane, in the channel of the central breath, between Prana and Apana. And then only the very condition for the experience or for the progress in that yoga is attained, Aham Putra. Then you become that true I, which is not identified with this stula sharira, with this gross body, etc. Then how does the process proceed? It proceeds by a vibration, spandana. Spandanam spandanene, he duplicates. See, again, this vibration, it is something which happens spontaneously. Because you can make a move, you can move your body, whatever, but that inner vibration, it has to come of its own. So that you just observe it when you practice, when you meditate. Very subtle vibration. So after rising through the central breath and joining his energy with the already risen supreme energy, the power of the true I consciousness causes a vibration which is at the root of the dynamic process. In order to become a divine body, all the elements and levels of the body have to be pervaded and charged with the same energy, starting from the lowest chakras and adharas. By piercing, how does it happen? By piercing with the subtle mantra sound. Nada sutya prayogena vedhayet. Now this word piercing comes several times in the process, and again it is only done with awareness. It is not, again, nothing forceful. At the end of the whole process of the subtle yoga, he says, then he has to pierce all these chakras, adharas, nadis, etc. with the spear of awareness. Now I found it very beautiful that your Bhairava, in one hand he has a spear. So I have now interpreted in that sense, Shula, Jnana Shula, the spear of awareness. So piercing through only with your awareness, but very sharp. That's why it's piercing. And even that sound, that mantra sound, it has to be very subtle to pierce through. Nada sutya prayogena vedhayet. Because, of course, our Micah is a master of the art of vibration. Any vibration creates a subtle sound. And so the whole spanda and is at the basis also of nada, of sound. So you have if you have listened to the bowls, you know that it's a vibration which produces that sound. So this nada sutya vedayat. And then by means of which all constituents of the subtle body are pierced. Thus two movements happen, one descending and the other ascending on the part of the central channel. Madhya nari patarudho vetayet paramam dhruvam. At the end of this ascent to the supreme firm state follows the entrance into the state of all-pervading Shiva. Tatsto also vyapaka Shiva. The process of divinizing the body and opening your awareness to that energy, you attain a quality which is very central to Shiva, that is vyapaka, pervasiveness. So that pervasiveness, for that you have some practices in Vijnana Bhairava, just looking at the open space and entering completely in that pervasiveness of space. Akasha is one of the great symbols of that pervasiveness. Vyapaka Shiva. But from that highest point of the path, the yogi descends again in the heart, filling it with the same energy. Punna apuryate naiva margena hridayantara. We have already seen that commentary. It is here where he meditates on the elixir found therein. Tyayet laptam rasayanam. Now this rasayana is a very interesting one. It also means something like alchemy. It is not just the amrita, but like in alchemy, you know, that metal or that substance is used for transforming. So it's a transformative action of this amrita, which he attains. Tyayet laptam asayana. It is only after descending into the heart that he experiences repose. Because that ascending, of course, it is a dynamic process. It is a dynamic process, and if you have not stabilized it, it will be repeated. It's still dynamic. But only when you descend in the heart, you attain that vishrati, that repose. Vishrama anubhavam prapya. And from that full satisfaction found in the heart, another action starts spontaneously. From the fullness of the elixir filling the heart, the yogi moves from interiorization to pouring out that blissful and immortal nectar everywhere. Sarvam tat amritam vegat savatraiva virichayet. Pouring out and filling his own body with its innumerable nadis go side by side, and the result of both is a divine state overcoming old age and death. So this is a summary of the whole process of Kula Prakriya, and then we should also move on to the Paradhyana. I think this we have already done. Verse 46. Thus he should meditate on the body as completely full. The yogi should contemplate the entire body as being filled with the nectar of Sushumna. It's interesting. Filled with the nectar of Sushumna. Because he has discovered that nectar in the Sushumna, so it's a kind of expansion of the same experience. Completely pervading all his channels, pouring it out to every pore of his body. So this is this much on the subtle dhyana, sukshma dhyana. Now let us come to paradhyana. It is chapter 8 in the text, and Supreme Yoga, page 69 is this chapter and the book. Again, I am mainly focusing on the Madhya, otherwise it's a very rich process and experience, it's impossible to summarize it. But the basic starting point for Paradhyana, see, if at the level of the Sukshma, the subtle jhana, you become a divine body with all this blissful filling with nectar, etc. At the level of Paradhyana, the yogi, and this is a kind of Upanishadic insight, the yogi is already Shiva. He is Shiva, and so there is only, again, to create that awareness of his own divinity. And so it starts with a very Upanishadic-like statement. So the translation of chapter 8 starts on page 180. By the way, these introductory or Mangala verses to the individual chapters are also very beautiful. Like here, glorious is the I, the conqueror of death, which is one's own light, the great light of consciousness, beautiful with the movement of vibration and abundance of intense bliss. It's a very beautiful sloka. So now here he starts at the very high level, like in the Upanishads, that which cannot be expressed by words, which is eternal, which cannot be seen by the eyes, which cannot be heard by the ears, which cannot be smelled by the nose, which cannot be tasted by the tongue, which cannot be felt by the tactile sense, which cannot be conceived by the mind, which is free from color and taste, and yet is endowed with every color and taste. There's a little difference in the Tantra from the Upanishads, which is immeasurable beyond the senses. Attaining that, O Goddess, the yogis become ageless and deathless by their great practice and supreme renunciation. And then comes something of an ethical or moral condition for entering into that highest path of yoga, Paradhyana. So I'm not going into all that. And here there are two verses, and actually I have been inspired by listening to Swami Lakshman Chu on just one verse of chapter 8, which is about Madhya. So these are where the streams are flowing together, and so I don't want to go much into, because I don't have the time to expand. But these two verses where it's a question of Madhya. At the beginning, after stating the transcendental state, etc., and then it is said in verse 8 to 9, page 182, if he realizes it means that state, merely by a moment's awakening, then due to this realization itself he is liberated and will not be born again. So that I have struggled a lot with this nimesha unmesha, but then I found it confirmed that my interpretation is right. Just a moment's awakening. And that reminds us of the Vatulanatha that sahasa, that suddenness. And then Kshemaraja, who is otherwise very explicit and very talkative and makes it very extensive, but here he is very brief in explaining this nimesha unmesha, this moment of awakening. He says, by any means, but that one has to see in the Sanskrit, of course. By any means is to be inferred in the center. In the center he attains means he is absorbed. Therefore it only depends on that and not after a lapse of time. It is momentary. He is liberated means that he is endowed with divine qualities even in his body and prana. And this of course is Jivanmukti. He does not obtain another body in rebirth after leaving this body, but he verily becomes the Supreme Shiva. Now let us look at the Sanskrit. It Lapyate shashvatam nityam shivam avyayam uttamam nimesho meshamatrena. Because I don't have the Kshemaraja Sanskrit. It's only the Tantra. But I think it's in the commentary. By any means is to be inferred in the center. You have the Sanskrit of the Kshemaraja? It's very small. It's too small, I can't do it. इसके बाद
ये कहना चाहिए
after it no, before it's a commentary on 8 yeah yes kenachit madhye kenachit it's too small kenachit
madhye adhyaharyam
yes so he says you could by any center. Now, we already have 3 or 4 days of working with Madhya, so we have a choice of centers. Of course, the main center is always the Udana or the Madhyanari, etc. But like in the Vijnana Bhairava, and of course Kshemaraja quotes Vijnana Bhairava extensively afterwards, there are many practices on Madhya. So you take any one of these practices, meditation or awareness of any center, and by that you get it very immediately, sahasa. This is very brief, there you have to fill in so many other things which are there in the tradition and also in the text itself. But you have to complement something. So by any center. So that is why if with all these examples of meditation or awareness of center, you just take one, practice with one. And that will be enough, as the Vijnana Bhairava says. Just take one center. And now I've come to the Sanskrit. And then follows, after this very brief indication where you don't really know much what to do, except meditate or concentrate on any center, according to Kshemaraja. But the Tantra doesn't help us much here. But then follows a reinterpretation of the Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga as we know it from Patanjali, but in a completely different meaning. Just completely changing the meaning. And here there's this one crucial verse on Madhya, which I learned from Swamiji. See, first when the reinterpretation, very brief, of Yama and Niyama. Yamana means to be ever detached from the world of becoming, samsara. Niyama is constant contemplation on the supreme reality. So there's no question of any disciplines or any ethical or other disciplines. If you are detached from samsara, everything else will follow. And if you are contemplating constantly on the supreme reality, also everything will follow. So it's a kind of simplification at the level of paradhyana. At the level of paradhyana, it becomes simplified, but one should not be mistaken, because simplification means also intensification. Simplification is not a shortcut, but you have to be at that level to contemplate on the supreme reality constantly. And then you don't need all these yamas, niyamas, etc. But one should not make it an excuse of not practicing ahimsa and so on and so on. It's not an excuse. It is only valid at that level where he is always called parayogi, a yogi of the highest level. And then comes asana. We are so fond of asanas, and many of the yoga schools, 80% of the time is spent with asanas. So what is asana? Again, we have to... I want to give first the Sanskrit, because that was Swamiji has commented on that. Madhyamam pranam ashritya pranapana patantaram alambya jnana shaktim cha tatstam chaiva asanam labhet. Resting in the central prana at the junction between the paths of exhalation and inhalation, supported by the energy of awareness, and establishing himself in that, he should take hold of his seat. So that is another kind of asana than where I am sitting now. Asana means from where you start. I mean, you have to be placed in some either physical or spiritual level or state. And that state, that asana, is precisely our practice of Madhyama Prana. But supported by the energy of awareness, Jnana Shakti. So again, awareness is the only instrument which you have here. And resting in the central prana, it is very peaceful way. It's a very... And that, of course, once you enter into that Madhya or in any Madhya, you will experience that tremendous blissful and peaceful state, which is, as we have seen yesterday, which is free from, it is nirguna, it is shunya, it is empty of all thoughts and nirvikalpa. So, supported by the energy of awareness and establishing himself in that, he should take hold of his seat. So, if at the time of sitting for meditation, you keep this as your asana. Then that purpose will be fulfilled. Of course, we're sitting physically, but the important thing is this asana where you start from the center. You start from the center. So Kshemaraja, we see his commentary, supporting himself on the udana, which is the rising prana situated in the central nadi, between exhalation and inhalation, in between the left and the right channel, and then by merging his pervasion of prana and making emerge the pervasion of consciousness, he unfolds the energy of awareness of the nature of flashing forth and supports himself on this consciousness. The yogi who is established in this kind of asana becomes of the nature of the great Lord of consciousness, nothing less, who is seated on the asana of his own energy of awareness. This is great because how it connects you with the divine. When we look at any deity or Buddha seated on a lotus, Padmasana, on a lotus, and what means that? Lotus, of course, means purity, but also this is implied. Seated on the energy of awareness, Jnana Shakti. So the yogi who starts his practice from this asana, he becomes one with the Lord of consciousness. Can you see the Lord of consciousness in Sanskrit? Because I don't have the Yes. Chin, yes. Yes. So it is that seat, that starting point, is in consciousness. It is not any physical seat, or not even psychological. It is pure consciousness because it is already the divine. Then, of course, he goes on identifying the other yogangas with different levels, culminating in 4 kinds of samadhi, which are very important. I have not found also in any other tantra that also the number of yogangas remains 8. That is a classical number from Patanjali. But samadhi is of 4 kinds. So it does not, these are not counted separately. But you can experience samadhi in one or the other way. So at least I don't want to deprive you of this extremely beautiful variety of samadhi, and then we come to, yes. Samadhi is 8:17. Fixing one's mind equally in all beings is called samadhana, absorption, free from mental representations. This is called true samadhana. Samadhana is a synonym of samadhi. All else is merely befooling the people. This is very funny. Even the Tantra itself makes a kind of ridicule of these yogis who just sitting very closed eyes and completely making a show of their samadhi. All else is befooling the people. See, unless your samadhi carries you to an attitude of compassion, of being of equality. And that place, of course, samadhana, samatha, that harmony, a balance, that equality with all beings. Otherwise it's not samadhi, it's just befooling the people that we are very much advanced and we are very deeply in samadhi. But unless it leads you to that sense of equality, that compassion, that harmony with all beings, and that is where we come to the whole topic of compassion. So, what I have. Just to give you these other examples of samadhi, which is of course the result of asana, because you start, asana means the starting point, and then you go to samadhi. Through the other stages, of course, the other angas. So I'm leaving out the commentary. 18. When one has a sense of equality for all beings in this world, seeing oneself and others as equal, contemplating thus, I am Shiva, I am free from duality. This is called the highest state of samadhi. So the Shivoham, Advitiyoham. It's a kind of mantra. You can also use it as a mantra for meditation. So again, the same tone of that unity, harmony with all beings, etc. And then 19, this is known as the supreme samadhana, in which the perfect essential nature, one's own awareness, the nature of consciousness arising from one's own being, and the true nature of one's own experience are realized. So I'm not going into the commentary. Now, the last one, this is known as samadhana, when one has discerned that through the mass of conscious and inert things, one realizes the immutable, eternal, everlasting state. So it is again, it's an integration, it's not an exclusion, but passing through the whole of reality and integrating it and transcending it into that immutable, everlasting state. So these are 4 kinds of samadhi, which Kshemaraja has identified with the 4 upayas, but now I'm not going into that. We have to come to what is the state of a yogi in that paradhyana, which is of course the ideal of the Jivan Mukti, (824). Do we have it? Yes. We are coming to the highest state of the yogi. And page 186 of the translation. Well, as the result of this Ashtanga Yoga and its complete transformation, he says the one who by this eightfold yoga is firmly established in his own supreme nature, with this realization he conquers time and becomes the supreme Lord Amritesha. O goddess, he becomes the conqueror of death, and time cannot affect him any longer. That's a commentary. He has renounced the 36 tattvas. Now, those of you who know the Shaiva system, the whole reality, not only cosmos, consists in 36 tattvas. Starts from the cosmic to the divine, to the human, etc., etc. So they often summarize it from earth to Shiva. So from earth to Shiva there are 36 tattvas. He has renounced the 36 tattvas and discarded all the infinite worlds. He is above the 81st, these are connected with language, and beyond the 50 phonemes. He pervades all the mantras. He is the life in every being. Being beyond the 38 kalas, being the end of all, he is in the center of everything. Nobody can know his beginning, middle or end, but he attains everything, being immeasurable and incomparable. This is tremendous. It is a statement not about Shiva, but about the yogi. Being the end of all, he is in the center of everything. It's a tremendous statement. He is in the center of everything. That's commentary of Shemaraja. Having renounced the tattva starting from earth up to Shiva and the worlds starting from Kaulagni to Amashrita Shiva, and attaining by the method of Navatma mantra, that is the one who pervades all the mantras starting from Pranava, Om, and all the 50 phonemes starting from A, going beyond the 38 kalas, and these are all phases of the manifestation of Shiva, who transcends all the 6 cosmic paths, and therefore is the life of all, and the beginning and the end of all. And being of such nature, he is at the center of the universe. And nobody can attain his beginning, middle or end, because he transcends space and time. And therefore, being beyond duality, he is unknowable and immeasurable. And here it is interesting because the text shifts between the yogi and Shiva. It is both the yogi and Shiva. What he actually attains is the state of Amritesha Bhairava, who is all in all, Sarva Savatma Amritesha Bhairavata. So what this again implies that in the Tantric Yoga, although he has to transcend all these cosmic levels, but he does not leave them out. He includes everything. He embraces everything. And he is at the center of the universe. There's a tremendous statement about the yogi who has gone through this parathyana to reach a state of, it's not said Jivan Mukti, but it is Jivan Mukti, of course, which means not denying, not excluding, but including and being at the center of the universe. So this is the goal of which the para-yogi attains. So we have some confirmation from the nature. Yes. He says, yes, he said. I don't want to go beyond that because it is really the highest point of the parathyana or the supreme yoga. And at the beginning of our meditation afterwards, I will also explain at least translate some of the Mangala shlokas, which are also very beautiful. So we conclude with Varishad.
Shakti Sahita